Welcome to Nerds Talk About the Boys, the show where we do what the fuck you think we're doing. I'm SC. This is DP. And we're going to talk about The Nerds, the show on Amazon, The Boys, the show on Amazon, Season 2, episodes 1 through 3. I'm super excited to get this going. A lot of really cool stuff on the show, a lot of really new stuff for us here. DP, before we jump into what is going to be an awesome recap, an awesome discussion of some really cool stuff on The Boys, why don't you tell the good people who have decided to spend some time with us where they can find us?
Make sure that you are following us all over social media at Nerdcyclopedia. You see it down there at the bottom. Make sure that you follow us, subscribe, do whatever you need to do. Of course, you're here watching us on YouTube or whatever channel that you're watching on. Make sure that you subscribe and hit the notification button. So anytime that we are on live, you will get a notification, or anytime we basically just put up a video, period. Also, make sure that you guys are going to nerdcyclopedia.com where you see all our links. We have different, stuff on the site and everything regarding the different podcasts that we're into. Mainly, what we're talking about right now, The Boys. And also make sure that you're following us. I'm DP Brown at Dog Pound Brown. You see it at the bottom there. And also make sure that you're following. Got to make sure I point the right direction. Hitch, my partner Hitch, on at Still See Hitch. Just make sure that you follow us all over social media there.
There you go. We say wild stuff on social media that we're too afraid to say on the show. And we're not afraid to say much on here, but there's some stuff here. Okay, so The Boys Season 2 has done something I didn't think it was going to do, and it's given a lot of depth, more depth to these characters than
already. I mean, in just 3 episodes, it's a lot to unpack. I mean, the characters get deep. I mean, no pun intended.
Yeah. There's a lot of character work happening for sure. One thing about it's like The Boys Season 1 is almost like a car crash. It's like a sequence of events that happens and it's wild.
And you just can't look away. You're right from the beginning of the very first episode of the first season. Your mouth is agape. Yep. Just open and everything. And just like you said, like a car crash, it just goes by. And no matter how much you try to look away, you just can't.
To borrow from Mike Judge, to borrow from his movie Idiocracy, sometimes I lost my train of thought there. Sorry, guys. My bad. All right, so. Yeah, that's my bad.
Future callback.
It'll come back to me later. All right, so the story of The Boys, again, it's broadened, and so it's. Oh, I now know what I was going to say. In Idiocracy, there's a movie called Butt, and it's just a butt on the screen. And then the main character, who's smarter than everyone, says, "Why don't you care about the butt?" And why doesn't the butt fart? You know what I mean? So, or if we find out a lot this year about why the butt farts, is what I was going to say.
Hilarious.
Okay. So let's talk. I'm going to break it up a little bit by episode. I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to talk in the order of the show. The first thing I want to address, though, is this. It's the relationship between Black Noir and Homelander. I want to talk about that because
I didn't even expect you to go there.
Well, this is where we start. Because so Homelander is this symbol of American power, and he is brutal and he is ruthless. But there are things, I guess, that he still doesn't want to be seen doing. He doesn't want to get his hands dirty, right?
Right.
So he sends Black Noir when he knows that he's just gotta. It's going to be the type of thing where no survivors, no witnesses. It is what it is.
When a dirty deeds need done, there was go Black Noir and everything. He's right at him.
To neutralize the super terrorist.
And he just had to slide in, because his thing was, he has to brand and name him. He should be called super villain, but we'll call it what it is right now.
Right. It's so fun that there's this running gag in this show where Homelander wants to call them super villains and nobody will let him, and he gets petulant like a child about it and corrects them and keeps putting his finger up. Super villains. Very, very funny. And he's just the type of guy that has to have it his way in a certain way, or else he'll cut you in half with his laser beam eyes, which will take no effort from him.
Right.
The first time we see Homelander is at Translucent's funeral, and there are so many great. Before we talk about the overarching symbolism, let's talk about the great empty suit gags that they keep showing in the background.
The empty suit gags are just way too hilarious. Him hold him up as a baby. Him actually him growing up, and you never see his face. You just never see. It's just empty suits, empty baby suits. His sister holding him up. his parents and everything, and then the Deep sees him in a bar,
Yeah.
and he said, "That's my arm. They cut me off again.
That's my shoulder in that picture.
That's my shoulder. They cut me off again." And then I mean, and then also the gags are like if you look closely at like some of the different signs that are posted with like the people who are came out of the funeral and everything, who are posting signs and stuff. See you in the next life. I'll see you. See me here and everything. just different stuff to just call to him being translucent and everything. It's just crazy, man. That was just you could tell that this is Seth Rogen production.
Yeah. There's this X-Men comic book where Colossus's sister Magic, Ileana, dies, and they have a funeral for her, and everyone shows up in their costumes and stuff just like this. So there's this weird sort of a trope inversion where these like formal events that we have as people. Like if I were in the X-Men, that I would show up in my full X-Men regalia. You know what I mean? With like the whole head, like the headpiece and that like amplifies my mind beams and stuff.
Right.
So having this funeral like this and having it being, having it played for laughs while at the same time being just so full of overt like fascist imagery. And I'm going to say it like that because there's this. If this had been released in June, I would have been shocked by how over the top all the fascist imagery was. But it was released in September, and so I'm sort of like, this seems like one they punted on this, right? Is that what you're feeling? Because it feels like in a vacuum, I would be just horrified. By this, but now I'm just like,
now it's like,
they could have done a little bit more.
From like, right.
I mean, I wanted this to be over the top.
How far removed from reality is this actually?
I know, right? So Homelander's like a pastor at this sort of like fake Christian church, and I think we sort of season 2 does this thing where there's a big flip in everybody's perception of the heroes, and I think that it's nice to anchor ourselves here because there's this divine right idea at play, right? And we talk about political philosophy, which we're gonna do, by the way, because it's my show.
Oh, I mean, this show just asks for it.
It does, right? So if you have this, like, if you marry the state and the church together, it's a very, very, very dangerous thing to do, because religion cannot broker compromise, and the government has to broker compromise unless it doesn't compromise with anyone.
Right.
Now, a lot of this stuff is sort of, this divine right of king stuff and who should be in charge and who should run everything. It's interesting because, it's basically the whole Enlightenment, the whole 18th century of political thought is the idea of who should be in charge, right? And you reach a point in philosophy where you get to a guy named Friedrich Nietzsche, which you may have heard of before. He's very famous.
Nietzsche,
yes. And he has this idea that basically says that, you can, through your willpower, become more than morality. You can become something called an Ubermensch, or a Superman. And you can, through your own power, transcend the boundaries of morality, right? So what Homelander is he is that endpoint, right? He is the Superman, and he sees himself in this Nietzschean way. His will is supreme. Nothing can get in the way.
Right.
Now, if some of this sounds familiar to you, and maybe you've been watching a lot of documentaries about World War II, it might. but
quite possibly.
It may. It's interesting. This very episode links us to the Nazis, right? So Homelander isn't just the progeny of Nazis. He wasn't just designed like in a lab by Nazis. He was then raised by them.
Yeah, with superpowers at that.
With superpowers, so he really can demonstrate. It's like, how do you know you're better than everybody? Well, I can fly. Watch. Okay, I guess. I mean, geez.
This guy, he wants to control his own branding. So in the first episode, we see him meet a potential member of the Seven. So Ashley brings him, another member, and he's sort of like a daredevil-ish type of guy. But her thing is that, the inclusivity and like the diversity and everything, him being like, I believe like of Asian descent, and him being having the what word would I want to use? Him being blind, Homelander refers to him as crippled, but there's a nicer
obviously he's not, right? He's jumping around and like
yeah, right. He's doing all this, and it looks amazing, when he does it, just like how Daredevil would. And which is like he's like a spoof off of that.
Right.
But Homelander, sees him for what he really is, or what Homelander, wants him to be and everything. You're bringing me somebody who is not perfect, imperfect, at that. Homelander wants the most perfect people in his group, to represent him, essentially. Since he's a leader and he makes the decision right after, he snaps his ear and everything, makes, blood splatter, go all out of it.
Blood.
A lot of
ear blood. I guess
he makes the
he's
decision,
injured.
right. Oh yeah, he's done. He's quite done.
Hurt.
He makes the decision to, be in charge of his own branding, be in charge of his own marketing and everything. Now, come on now. If they're supposed to be all like, this whole marketing thing and Vought is like the controllee of everything, how is Homelander now in charge of taking care of all that? Because he sees himself as a superior over everyone.
So he wants to run the Seven. He wants to run everything about the Seven. He wants total control over, who joins the Seven and who runs with him. And he hates disabled people. And that's not weird because, as you may remember, and this is another thing that was probably in some of those documentaries, the Nazis weren't very keen on the disabled. They did some very mean stuff to the disabled, including sterilization and murder. So having someone who could easily take control of the world, if they felt like it,
they felt like it. He's really holding himself back.
I really don't want to do it. I mean, I'm trying everything I can not to have to do this. Is pretty much what it is.
I'm just being nice with you guys and everything. But also, we flip over to Stan. So we meet Stan. He's like the head of Vought, right?
Yeah.
He's like the.
Well, we mean Edgar, Mr. Edgar. Is that what you mean?
Is his name Stan Edgar?
You mean Giancarlo Esposito, right?
Yeah,
yeah, Mr. Edgar. Okay, same dude. Yeah, we're talking about the same guy. Homelander's a little afraid of him. That's weird. Why?
Right. Right. Exactly.
Why? Now, there's a speech that they have where basically we get this whole big background of like what's been happening in the history of superheroes in this universe, which, as you know, DP, is a particular peccadillo of mine. I am always interested in what's been going on since World War II because I feel like you have to address comic book history if you want to make a subversion of the tropes, right? You have to say it's real and it has to be existing. And they talk about Soldier Boy killing dozens of Axis and using this substance to create supers for years and years and years. And you know what I've been thinking? It's like this weird thing. We got an age on Translucent, right? He was like 40 years old, okay?
Yeah.
So he was born in 1980, which makes him a high millennial or an early millennial, much like myself. So we're in the same generation. I was thinking about this. The Seven is a lot like a sports team in that it seems like you sort of age out of being hip and then they kind of replace you with somebody who's younger. Right. And as an older millennial, as someone who's on the far side of 35, I appreciate them showing the tension between like us and the people born in the 90s because they're like us but they're not us. no they're not.
It's a different thing,
So you see A-Train, like all these guys are like Homelander's getting older, A-Train's getting older, and you have some like Queen Maeve. I have this idea that a lot of these guys like the Deep, they're all about 35 to 40, something like in that range, maybe 45. Maybe Homelander's 90 years old. I don't know. He could be. Superman doesn't age either, right? So maybe he's 90 years old. But there's this like generational shift that's happening where maybe A-Train used to be the youngest member and now he's sort of turning into middle and older.
Yeah.
And we've got Starlight and Stormfront are both probably like 24.
Yeah, they're the younger, and you see that with A-Train because he's now taking more Compound V and everything. He's sort of like filling himself more because he's aging, like it's outside of the bracket. Yeah. Eventually, if this thing is what it is as far as marketing and everything, they're celebrities. And we see in Hollywood as far as like older celebrities, they don't take as well as like younger ones. They're not like the shiny new object and everything. So Stormfront is coming in. We got Starlight coming in. Those are like the shiny new objects on the block and everything. And I mean, not to get too far ahead, but we see by the end, Stormfront is at the front.
So Stormfront, let's talk about her because she's the new superhero from Portland, and she seems to be about 24. I think she's a younger millennial, maybe born around 90, maybe in the mid 90s or something. And she is very progressive when it comes to issues of both, it seems, race and sex. However, much
she's not afraid to speak her mind.
No, she is not. Much like Lord Voldemort, not a fan of the normals. Not a fan of the normals. So again, we see this attachment to the Nietzschean idea of the Superman, and we see her specifically reject religion too, which is another aspect of that sort of idea of the over person, the beyond moral person.
It's so great that they didn't make her a type.
Yes.
And they put like super dimension on her, she came off as like a specific type and everything. So I'm like the new girl, the rebel and everything, the one that'll say like, anything that comes to her mind and stuff. And of course, Starlight, she's sort of attracted, not attracted, but she's sort of like, taken on to that. Because she wished she could say some of the things that she had, that she does and stuff. But the Stormfront, she comes in the door, first, you talking about being like a, young, and she's with like her phone and everything, and broadcasting, out to her followers and all that stuff, and just doing everything that you would, you'll see, this current generation doing and all that, and then we see her doing not a 180, but just adding more dimension and character to her thing, especially when she murdered, when she ended up murdering that the one girl,
the whole family.
Yeah,
for no reason.
Yeah,
she should have just walked right through, right? I mean, there was no reason whatsoever to do that. It was like fun for her.
Right.
So that's.
Who does that remind you of? Oh man.
So. This show is interesting because it seems to me that it has been a very bad idea to allow people to have superpowers, especially young people.
Superiorly bad, man. How do you even contemplate, okay, we're going to give all these people powers, grow and raise these people, and then, turn them about the world and still claim control. How they maintain a control is just beyond me, but, they're trying to do it, through whatever means that they do. So yeah, you're right. This is crazy. This is craziness.
I'm excited about.
How do you control the Justice League?
How would you, right? And remember, the answer is Batman has that $1 million sliver of a meteor, and what does he say? There's this cartoon where the Justice League is getting together. He tells the Martian Manhunter, "I have a $1 million sliver of meteor for him. I just need a pack of matches for you," or something like that.
Oh yeah, right? Yeah. That they had a Grant Morrison, I believe, had a hate Sam for both the wrong offer. But there was a storyline in the Justice League comic books and everything where Batman had something on every Justice League member just in case. And they found out Batman had that on them. They got really mad at him, and sort of ostracized him to a degree and everything. But him being Batman. He has to, if these superpowers, Batman has no powers. If these superpowers ever decided they wanted to be like the Seven, right. He has to find some way to take them out. So, of course, he's Batman. He has to have that, the ace in the hole.
Yep. Well, that's because in the DC universe, and this is something I think I mentioned last in the preview or the recap. This is an atheist superhero story. Because there is no power. There's no overarching power that bends everything toward the good, right? Good people don't always win. And the people that have the powers don't feel like they need to be responsible because they're not above us. They are just people. Now, I would say, if I were arguing about Nietzschean philosophy, that undoes the entire concept of the overperson. But then again, we've lived through the history of the 20th century, so we know what's a good idea and what's not a bad idea.
So it's pretty much written right there. Okay, this is what you should do. Yeah. This is what you should not do. Don't copy this part of history, but if you don't learn this section of history, you will repeat it in the future.
Exactly. So that's the whole point of studying history. And nobody does, and that's okay. We're a stupid species, guys. It's all right.
Maybe Homelander wants to do American exceptionalism at one point.
I'm just gonna say this. Maybe we should mix church and state. Let's just mix church and state because it's never been tried before.
Stop it.
All right. So let's talk about Annie. I'm going to talk about Annie now because
Annie, I love Annie, man.
Annie is the best. I think Holly brought this up, and we were watching my wife Holly. We were watching The Boys together because we have that kind of relationship where she'll put up with it.
Right, yeah, buddy.
And there's this scene, it's the montage right at the beginning where Huey's watching Billy Joel's Pressure on the music video, and she's taking off all her sort of Starlight accoutrement.
Right.
And what Holly said is it reminds her of these sort of tropey girl scenes where they do that take off the makeup bit, right? I think there's one, she specifically called out How to Get Away with Murder, which is one I remember and a good one, right?
Okay.
So they take off all their makeup. And I was struck in this superhero story, there's this trope where like Batman, right? The suit up, where he starts putting up all his stuff and he's got his bat suit on and he pulls his hood on and now he's no longer George Clooney. He's Batman.
With the nipples.
With nipples. Nipple Batman. Yes. The best Batman of all. So there's this idea that the superhero puts on this accoutrement to become a hero, right? Puts on this costume, this makeup, whatever they put on. But Annie removes all of it, right? And then Annie is the superhero. Yeah. So it's Batman in reverse. It's the inverse. It's a mirror of that trope because she's a woman, first of all, and because she is. It's more courageous for her to go out by herself as herself. Yeah.
So a total inverse because right where we see her in the beginning, she's at the funeral procession and everything, or the ceremony and everything. She's singing. She's singing her song
actress,
and all.
By the way, that's actually the actress.
Oh, she's actually singing that for real.
I looked it up. It was we accidentally paused it, and the X-ray said it's her.
Wow, that's awesome. Hey, props to her.
Pretty good stuff.
So she's singing everything, singing really good too, by the way. But this is all, facade for her, and essentially. So she like you said, she takes on a brevity of doing like the side work with Huey. Trying to take down like the Seven, trying to reveal the Seven as who they are, trying to take Vought down in the Compound V and everything. So yeah, she is being very brave and actually becoming the superhero. And we see judging from last season, we see how the relationship is. But those two are the heart of the show. When everything is really stripped down, you have the Billy the Butcher is overly, eccentric in how he is, Homelander, oh my God, we know how he is, and then the rest of the Seven. But you got these two who really ground us into their relationship, number one, and just making the boys more human, more relatable, if you get me.
It's a great relationship because, they really shouldn't be together. It's a bad idea, a terrible idea, and they can't stay away from each other. And a part of it is because what does Mother's Milk say to Butcher? He says Huey's like your canary. You can't kill him because he lets you know when you go too far.
I love that.
Right?
I love that. That was such a great way to tether him back because those two, Butcher and Huey, are polar opposites.
Right.
But considering how Billy is, Billy is, and just his overall, personality, just for Mother's Milk to define that, as him being a canary and everything, that was brilliant. Great writing.
And these guys, so let's talk about where the boys ended up. So they're living like the humans in one of those Terminator movies under a comic book store where they're like, at any second, Homelander could just walk right downstairs. There's nothing anyone could do about it, right? They're just in New York. And I think that there's this great...
in plain sight.
Absolutely. And there's this great scene where I think Huey is on the street and he's looking around and you hear Homelander sonic booming around New York, right? So he's around. So it's like, there's this like tremulous danger that's existent through the whole season because of that. I like that Starlight is not just going back to Huey, and I like that Starlight has her own plan, and she's gonna run that plan out no matter what else happens, and she's not gonna wait on anybody. She's no damsel, whatsoever.
Well, number one, Huey broke her heart. Last season, so she wants to do better and knows how bad, elements of the Seven are, especially Homelander.
Right.
So her going on her own just makes so much, more sense because she doesn't have to be tethered to what Huey's motivations are. It makes her character, and it keeps going back to what we're talking about, well-rounded characters in this show, and they're not just types.
Right. They have depth, and they do weird stuff that's totally incomprehensible. Like I want to talk for a second about the Stillwell getting blown up, like a ID thing that they had where they were showing the reproduction with a really bad accent. Oh, blow you up, lady.
Oh, well, yeah, with Hansen, Steve Hansen.
Yeah, Chris Hansen.
Yeah, Chris Hansen. Yeah.
Why don't you have a seat, Mr. Butcher? Have a seat real quick. So you came over here to murder this lady and her child. All right.
And they just automatically assumed they knew exactly what happened because that's what was told to them.
Right.
You know, so this is the reenactment of how we see it. And it just really says a whole lot about how lies are put upon us,
Yep.
you know, how stories are fabricated and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we never know what really happened, but it suits the narrative. The narrative suits the narrative is of what they want to present just fits.
But, you know, Homelander can't help himself from putting his fingerprint on even this. He has this great cover story. It's absolutely perfect. He'll never get caught for this, ever, ever, ever. Right. And yet he picks up the baby and drops it off 17 miles away. That baby didn't get blown that far. Like, how'd the baby get that far? So obviously, this is what happened. It was Homelander, and everybody sort of winks at it. And we all have to pretend, because you'd never think it was really Homelander, I guess, if this were... Like, how much deprogramming would it take before the American people realize that Homelander is evil? That is now a question that is going to dangle over this season, I think.
Homelander has so many followers, so many loyalists and everything. You would literally have to see him in a weakened state of form in order for his followers to even look to see that, you know, that whatever he says isn't true, you know,
it's
because they see him.
Like, no matter what happens, a certain amount of people are never going to believe the truth, and a certain amount of people will always believe a lie, no matter what. Almost like if you study history, you can find out that always happens.
Hey, the bigger the lie, the more they believe. We learned that in The Wire 101.
That's right. You got to go with the big lie. I like this. So the next thing that basically comes up is Annie and the Gecko. I want to talk about the Gecko because that's kind of how, you know, Huey gives her this file so she can go see like her friend from church camp, which as someone with friends from church camp, I can relate. That's a weird relationship. And basically this guy is prostituting himself by letting people cut off parts of his body that immediately grow back for money, which is very, very grotesque.
That is very just gross. But it's funny.
I mean, I guess probably like anything else. Do you think you can train yourself to ignore that sort of pain? Do you think he feels that? Or do you think he doesn't even feel it? Because I know he doesn't react.
Imagine the producers just thinking of things, just outrageous stuff. Okay, well, how about, you know, if he comes in and just wants to, okay, instead of him just regularly growing back his limbs and everything, how about we make him, you know, pay and have him have people pay to see him, you know, actually cutting himself, cutting parts of his body off. Yeah. And then, you know, just throwing another gag. Well, you know, if throwing another $1,000, you could chop on my dick, you know. And the guy's just like all for it because it just shows it shows the element of what people will stoop to in order to pleasure themselves, you know. And this is a great way of, you know, it's hyper extended way, but it's a great way of showing that.
I love that. I also love that, like, the way that she blackmails him is by talking about the fact that they made him play Jesus Christ in the Passion Play because they could nail nails into his body, and he would just be like, "Whoa, that is something else. That is something else." I have a note here, and it's, you know, she basically says, so Annie tells Gecko, there's nothing up there. There's nobody in the sky. Not God, not Homelander, not anybody. It's all just lies. And then they're talking about this church camp where they take all the kids with superpowers to go to this church and say, like, whoa, God picked you to have these powers, right? God told you to do this. And they try to like impose a morality on these people, and it fails because you can't do that. I think I lost Sam. Hold on. I lost DP. 1 second, guys. We're all good. We're all good still.
You lost connection there?
Yeah, you're back. All right, cool. So anyway.
Okay.
So I was talking about how insidious I thought it was to take all the superpower kids and take them to one church camp and basically tell them that they're the elect of the world and that and that Jesus has picked them specifically for this purpose, and that they should feel like the earth is theirs to inherit, even though they're neither meek nor are they kind. So,
Right.
I think that that's an incredibly insidious thing, but explains a lot about the sense of entitlement that all these, especially the second generation people have, right? They would, of course, feel marked,
right,
as superior.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they've been told all their lives and everything, and they see how the generation before them is came about and everything. So of course they're feeling themselves even more, as especially with their powers and stuff. Let's touch a little bit back on Stormfront.
Yeah.
And just like the little gags, we talk about little sight gags and everything. If you guys picture closely when the Stormfront has her phone and just take your time, rewind and slow down and look at all the comments that people make when they're watching her live on her Instagram and everything. It's just way too hilarious and stuff. And the way she just introduces herself to Homelander with no type of fear, no fear of what have you. And he sort of gets taken aback with that, I thought it was a great way of setting up his antagonist, for the season.
It made me think a lot about like when a Hall of Fame player is near the end of their career and there's a new Hall of Fame player on the team. And there's a little bit of overlap where you have like an aging Joe DiMaggio, for instance, and a brand new Mickey Mantle, right? Mm-hmm. And it's expected that the young person, aka Mickey Mantle, is supposed to defer to the older person.
Right.
But the young person gets hurt a lot doing that, right? I mean, It costs. Mickey Mantle tore his ACL on a grating in Yankee Stadium because he pulled up on a fly ball because DiMaggio caught him off. Not everyone knows that. He used to be really fast, and then after that, he basically couldn't run anymore. So he never should have been deferring to DiMaggio. This older millennial, like older 70s, early 80s, right? Like 70 to 85 versus probably 85 to 0, like 20 to 35 and 35 and up. This is an interesting dichotomy in that I think that the adults, so the people that are boomers, don't understand that there's a big cut. There's a cut somewhere in the middle of there, and it depends on where you're from and what age you were when you started getting the internet. I really believe that there is a cut. Like if you grew up with the internet from the time when you were a child, you are a younger millennial, in my opinion. And if it came to you before... what I mean by this is very simple. Puberty. Before puberty, you're a younger millennial because the way you use the internet was pretty much settled before puberty. And if you're older than that, you're an old millennial. And it matters where you're from. Like I think that you get that cuts a lot sooner in places like New York and Chicago and LA than it is in places like where I'm from, which is like West Virginia, in case I haven't brought that up before. Not one of the cutting edge type places in the country is the way we'll put that. I really like this Mr. Edgar, just to kind of finish up episode 1 here.
Okay.
So they go and meet the deputy director of the CIA, who is like, that's like a 3-star general, by the way, in like American, like that's the equivalent, right? A lieutenant general. And she starts talking about Vought and this coup of the American government's getting set up for the inside, and her head just explodes right in everybody's face, just graphically, like Gallagher and a watermelon, just boom, smashes her head, and blood gets everywhere. And it wasn't Homelander that did that, right? Like, we know it wasn't Homelander. We don't understand the mechanism of what happened. But right after that, Mr. Edgar and Homelander have this conversation where Homelander is obviously very afraid of Mr. Edgar for some reason. And he's not afraid of Homelander for the same reason, right?
Yeah.
This is that Frederick Vought speech where we find out that Compound V was invented by Nazis and tested on, get this, Holocaust victims. So... technically speaking, it's not science that we should possess as a society because we've decided that science should only do ethical things. So this is forbidden knowledge. It's almost like like in Game of Thrones when Sam went to that like secret maester's place for no reason, or in a better story when someone goes to when Hermione goes to a library in Harry Potter, right?
Right.
Kind of like that.
Well, I mean, you come up with something and you need something to experiment on just to see if it actually works, just to see how it works. I mean, the mind is just that curious to where you're not even thinking about the safety of it. You're just trying to see if it actually, works, or what, not even if it works, but what actually is going to happen, So people could be the living bodies of experiments, hence like, making like vaccines or, just trying stuff out
without the people's consent or choice.
without the people's consent or choice.
This is a big problem, and it's something where there was some scientific knowledge that was not considered to be valid because it wasn't done under ethical circumstances. It was a it was a feature of the Holocaust. Dr. Mengele is probably the one. Like if you say
we could go all the way back to like the Tuskegee experiments. So
listen, nobody's saying the American government's clean on that.
It's history. If it was done before, like we was talking about the whole 20th century, is right there. What you should do, what you should not do. But if you don't learn, then you will repeat all over.
So this is experiments on people for profit. Ultimately, I mean, you're creating a privileged class. But how many kids are dying when you give them this stuff? Like, I know that there's probably some other stuff happening there. Adult patients are dying.
Yeah. Everybody can't turn out perfect. So, the right combination, it would be a really great episode to find out how Compound V was even invented and created and how it was even experimented. That would be a really dark episode. Probably not in tune with like the humor that we would like, that we're seeing like throughout The Boys, but that'd be really, really something deep for this show to actually touch.
It really would. It really would be something deep for this show to touch. And I think it could, because I think that the creative team that's involved sort of understands the difference between shocking and shocking because it's like bad. You know what I mean? Like to skip ahead, at the end of episode 3, there's basically a whale murder. Like a whale, a sperm whale gets murdered like on the deck of an old whaling ship. You know what I mean? Like there's ambergris on screen here because the Deep is an idiot and doesn't understand the laws of physics.
Such an idiot. Oh my goodness gracious, guy. My
goodness gracious. So if you can handle whale murder and you can handle shooting babies like they're guns, like bap 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 like that, then I think you can probably put together a Holocaust story that is at least has some sort of...
I know they got the capabilities. It's just whether they want to go there. I mean, they're already going there in a lot of ways. I didn't even think a show like this would go. So let's just do it. I mean, the people are loving what you guys are doing so far. Let's just go all the way with it.
Absolutely. So that's episode 1, and there's a lot to unpack between the main things I remember from this episode are the insane amount of fascist imagery and how I remember being like a year ago I would have been surprised by this and now I'm not. I remember how like powerful Annie really is, like how strong her will is and how strong of a character she is.
Yes.
And I remember this. I remember Homelander going into Stillwell's office and drinking her frozen breast milk. I remember that. Which made my wife say, apparently that's a porn thing and it's gross, is what she said.
And the way he just, sticks his tongue out in there and everything, it's just, oh man, he's just. I love the going back to I love the funeral, the casket of all glass and nothing in it, man. That's just a great gag right there, man. Oh my goodness. Like you guys,
when you get down to it, and this is probably going to be more than I even want to say or be serious about on this show. But remember when the apostles went to Jesus's tomb, he wasn't there waving at him, right?
Yeah,
gone.
Yeah. Okay.
So this empty tomb, right? An empty tomb and an altar at a church, and a very, very angry pastor. Who doesn't really respect the congregation, right?
And then at the end of the episode, we get our hero comes back, Mr. Billy Butcher, Daddy's home. Yep. I love the way he comes in because you already knew that no episode with a whole episode without Billy Butcher is like, okay, how can you have a voice without Billy? But they tried and they did a really good job, just establishing, that the other characters don't necessarily need him, per se. But when he comes, he comes with like, that fire and that, that brimstone and everything. He comes back and just sets everybody straight. Daddy's home, with that wicked smile, and he lets Huey know who's exactly in charge here.
Yeah. And Huey is not super. There's a weird leadership dynamic between the two of them, where he thinks that Butcher's kind of going in the wrong direction, and Butcher obviously just wants to kill all these powered people and really doesn't care, sort of about what gets in. He doesn't want anything to get in his way. He's just going to kill him.
Right.
We're treated to this scene where a man throws a boat at some Haitians, right? At the Haitian gang who smuggled him into the country. And I was thinking when this happened that it's going to be obvious that the boys are sort of involved in this, right? Because they're the ones that are going to go investigate it. And I'm just, at this point, I'm not sure what his powers are, but obviously he's very powerful. And this is sort of the focus of the second episode, right? Because the second episode is who is this mysterious man? And also, who's playing the deep skills? Like, how about that surprise?
You know what? It sounded like it was Patton Oswalt.
It's Patton Oswalt. It is. It's Patton Oswalt playing the deep skills.
But I couldn't find him in the credits. I was like, okay, he was. I tried to look at him on IMDb and everything. I didn't see his name. So that was Patton Oswalt.
That was Patton Oswalt playing. It was uncredited cameo. He's tweeted about it. He's tweeted about it.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Yeah,
I'm glad I know his voice sounded familiar.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
I mean, this is such a great bit, and it's the deep in sort of like under hallucinogenics, because he's hooked into this weird sort of Scientology-esque church that is like coming in to pick up the broken soups and direct them to Lord knows what end. I mean, these are people who, like Eagle the Archer says, like, oh, I just ran out of arrows. And then he says this thing that's this great tropey thing where he says, well, when I was thinking arrows versus Tech 9s, and that's just like that's such a superhero comic thing, right? Because Batman uses boomerangs, and like, what's the point of, like, Hawkeye's got bow and arrow? Like, what? Why wouldn't you just use a gun?
If it's AR-15s and, like, machine guns and everything, and you're coming out with an arrow, I mean,
there's only so many arrows in the quiver. Like, what?
Yeah.
So why even get involved, right? So the question is, it's the meta question. Like, would the world be better off without these superheroes? Would they, or would they not? And it seems that the comment is pretty much, I mean, of all those people would have been pretty much fine.
Yeah.
It would have been pretty much fine.
Well, it brings in that other joke about Aquaman. What is he? This guy talks of fish. Yeah. So how can you really take him seriously as a superhero when all he does is talk about fish? What is Aquaman when he's outside of the ocean?
Nothing. I love that commentary that Aquaman is the worst superhero of all time. And really, he's pretty useless unless you have a very specific circumstance. And I love that in episode 3, we get that specific circumstance, because there's a boat chase and there's an inlet.
Yes.
There's a boat chase and an inlet.
Yes.
And an inlet and a boat chase.
We finally see, him being useful. It's kind of.
What does he do? The stupidest possible thing. Does he jump on the boat and kick him in the face? Nope. That probably would have worked. No, he rides a sperm whale into the opening and says, I'll stop their boat, but the boys don't care. They crash through the whale.
Oh, Billy doesn't give a shit.
He doesn't care about people. He doesn't care about a whale.
Billy's like, okay, I can take this whale. I can take Moby Dick,
Oh, my God. So the Deep is the worst, right? And the Deep is also, like, has sharks on his team. And he's saying that the goldfish were begging for their lives to him, which is just so terrible.
For a guy who can really control 70% of the earth if it's made of water and everything, you would think the guy would get more respect.
I mean, the United States Navy is very important for that reason. They get a lot of respect from what I understand. You would think that the master of the oceans would get a lot of respect, but he's not. He doesn't even respect himself. He can't even love his own body that's augmented.
Not at all.
Oh, man.
Wow. Whole Gills thing is just hyper hilarious. We seen that last season where the girl was came into his hotel room and wanted to. She was just fascinated by the whole Gill thing, and it just turn her on, and stuck his. Oh,
she put her fingers inside his gills.
Oh my goodness! And I can only imagine, the pain that he felt, and he didn't.
That does hurt. I wonder if that hurts. That's a good question. That's an open question for me, because I mean,
Right.
I mean, you grab a fish by the gill, you don't feel bad about it, right? You feel terrible about it. But of course, the fish can't talk to you. If the fish was begging for its life, you probably wouldn't be so blasé about it.
But he's so self-conscious, man. I mean, and then Homelander at the end there saying his gill is showing, and it's disgusting.
Gill's showing. It's disgusting.
Way to just dig even more, into the deep. Dig
Make him
deeper.
feel terrible. The one person that will accept him as like a member of the Seven also does so and thinks he's disgusting, and is willing to do so despite all of his, but despite all of the sexual harassment and sexual assault allegations that dog him. A blonde guy draped in an American flag is ignoring sexual assault allegations against his deputy. So anyway, they crash into this whale, and it's this really disgusting scene. And there's this scene where Huey's like inside the whale and he's all busted up. He's like, "Leave me here!" And it was so funny to me because he's in the middle of a destroyed whale, and this is his paradise, right? Like he would prefer to be in this smashed, dying, because it's not dead yet because you can hear the heartbeat, dying whale than with Butcher. That's where he would rather be.
I mean, that's Huey. That's our hero. Huey, he just hates Billy that much. But like I said, towards the very end of the episode, we just find out that they need each other very badly in order for. Like, it just goes back to the metaphor we was talking about last season about the Spice Girls and everything. Yeah. Everybody has their individual parts. They're not really anything, but when they come together, they're the fucking Spice Girls. Canary, is what Huey is to Billy Butcher.
Yep. And you need that. You can't be just do it. You have to, at a certain point, you have to reach the end of what you're willing to do, because the ends can't always justify the means.
Right.
They can't, or else you're just what you're trying to fight, which is
a
literal Nazi. I mean, literally, he's like VOD is a Nazi company, so it's a little.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm thankful that they took away the any of the ambiguity about that. I'm thankful that they did that, because that makes it a lot easier to talk about when it is just real Nazis. I mean, because you can just we can make a video game where you just shoot them. It's like fine. So.
Let's talk about okay, so we hardly see these characters outside of their costumes. So we see like Annie, she's in and out of her costume like all the time. So that's just her character, period. We never see Homelander outside of his. We never I don't think we've seen A-Train. Of course, we don't see Black Noir. We never see Translucent. But just that one time during last season.
He still has a uniform though, which is hilarious. Because
right?
He's in that statue. It's just his uniform going like this.
So it was sort of weird that we got to see Queen Maeve, outside of her costume, talking with her girlfriend. And I like the dimension that they gave her. They didn't really explain her motivations like last season, why she was so just not wanting to be with, her girlfriend and everything. But we find out that all she's doing is trying to protect her, because Homelander, he is so much of a dick, that you just don't know how he's going to react, what's going to happen. And because they had him and Queen May had that type of relationship, if he ever found out about, Queen May's, woman on the side and everything, it might be the end of her. So this is the reason why she's keeping her at bay.
You gotta stay. She gotta stay away from me because I'm Homelander's girlfriend, and I thought that that movie script really clarified exactly what the problem is that Homelander can't afford to be seen as weak, and so he has to hold on to her, right? Because he, as strong as he is, it's all of a construction. He's not really strong. He's a very weak person and has to do these things like go and drink Stillwell's breast milk and all these crazy things because he's undisciplined, which is weakness.
Yeah.
So mentally, Homelander is exhibiting these signs that he's going to crack, and it's going to be a big problem for everybody that isn't as strong as Homelander.
Yeah. When the shit hits the fan, and when the bubble bursts, as they call it, and everything,
his rage bubble is going to be big.
Yeah. I mean, they got to figure out. It might be like a whole thing where everybody teams up. A trope thing just teams up to fight this guy. So it's curious to see how how that's gonna play itself out.
Let's talk for a second about Ryan. I want to talk about Ryan, poor little Ryan, and I want to say this about these scenes where Homelander's there, and it's sort of like having it. This is probably what it would be like to find out your dad was like if I found out my dad was John Elway, really, or something like that. And he kept coming around and being like, "You could be a quarterback," and I'm like, "I don't want to be a quarterback." He's like, "Well, you could. You're my son. You can throw the ball pretty good. Whip it around." I'm using that's not how John Elway talks. You guys know. He doesn't have a weird accent like that. But you understand what I'm going for.
Yeah,
This comedy of Ryan hating Homelander, like just really hating Homelander, is so funny because it's the one thing that Homelander has no control over, is whether or not his son is going to like him. Right? He has no control over this. It's the one person that can tell him to go fuck himself.
And isn't that the weakness of every parent? You know, you have your sons and you have your daughters and everything. You have your offsprings and stuff. You want to please them, and you can't be that cold to just dismiss them. Well, some people dismiss them, but in this instance and everything, that is his essential weakness and everything. So in effect, his mom also almost has that ultimate control because she controls her son, who essentially is controlling Homelander to a degree. Being that that's the weakness. He can't
just kill his way out of this, and
no,
that's the thing. Is like his number one button to press is the murder button, and if he does that, he knows he'll lose Ryan. Ryan will not. No.
Yeah. Ryan is not going to fuck with him like that.
No. You can't just kill his mommy and then think he's going to to be like, okay, fine, let's go get some ice cream.
Yeah.
Never gonna happen.
You're creating your enemy right there.
Exactly. So he is like, he's determined to show Ryan that he has powers. And there's this scene where he takes him up on the roof after breakfast, and they have this long conversation about how things are going to be great. And Homelander just shoves him off the roof. And there's this hilarious...
You knew that was coming.
There's this hilarious... But there's the hilarious dead body, smash scene where he smashes into the ground with absolutely no...
He's like, oh, well,
And he's fine.
Yeah, look, say he's fine. He's fine. Look, he's... And then his mom just, it's great Homelander material right there. Great scene, of Homelander just being the cold, dick asshole that he is and everything. And then, eventually, of course, his son, because that's his son. He's fine and everything. Yeah. But his son is now enraged. What the heck is going on? And then Homelander confronts his mom. Mm-hmm. Which his son is not really feeling whatsoever.
No, and he basically punches him, right? He like punches him and like smacks, like shoots him with the lasers, and Homelander's like, yes. So now,
I knew it.
Terrible. Like this is a terrible position to be in if you're now, if you're Becca, because now guess what button's gonna get pressed instead of murder? It's gonna be torture mommy, and that's gonna be a much worse position than just pushing the kid off the roof.
Right.
That had a very Jamie Lannister, like at the end of Game of Thrones, at the end of that first episode of Game of Thrones, where he shoved the kid out the window.
Oh yep.
I had that smiling blonde guy, glad handing. Whoop.
The event that drove the show.
Yes. Yes. So, man.
We jumped around a lot.
But that's okay because this is what happens when Amazon releases more than one episode. You're gonna get a show where we're gonna talk about the themes, and because you don't want us sitting here and going through the plot beat by beat.
Well, let's just briefly talk about the great way they distributed this. So we get the 3 episodes. Mm-hmm. We last season we just got all 8 episodes at one time, and bam, it just hit everybody up inside the head. It didn't nearly get as much coverage as how it is right now because everyone is just now discovering the show and knowing how great that first season was.
It's not just that too. Think about it. 2019. This came out like July of 2019. Mm-hmm. That is 3 months after Endgame. So superhero movies had reached its saturation point, but now we haven't seen any movies for 6 months.
We haven't seen nothing. Yeah, because of COVID and everything, we're starved.
No Black Widow, no surprise.
No Wonder Woman,
no nothing.
No,
not
nothing,
even a Christopher Nolan movie that isn't a Batman movie. You can't even get that. So 2020 has not been super nice to us about, not at all about movies. So this is now like the apex superhero content that's out there. It's no longer a B tier thing because the A tier took the year off.
Yeah.
So it's getting a whole new, its relationship to the superhero tropes is completely changed by the fact that it is now the premier superhero vehicle of this moment. So when people are watching this, it's number one.
Not to mention that it's dropping some really great jewels about things that are actually happening in real life right now. So some of the parallels, of things being talked about in this show to things that actually happen outside of the show is just really just scary to a degree. You know,
it is scary to see the symbolism of the American flag being subverted by Homelander to, you know, use those symbols as a way to prop his own power.
Yeah.
And
to garner loyalty and to garner like as many followers, just okay, we know this flag means so much, you know, to everyone and everything. So let's take this symbol and, you know, just wipe it all in their faces.
But the thing is that there's something called a simulacrum. Do you know what a simulacrum is, if I say that word?
Please define it.
So it's a postmodern idea where if you make a bunch of copies of something, the quality degrades over time, right?
Right.
So what Homelander is he's a simulacrum of patriotism. He's a simulacrum of Superman. He's not. He's an inversion of those things. So he's not actually patriotic, but he's symbolically super patriotic. He's not actually moral, but he's symbolically and outwardly super moral. He is a hyper hypocrite. And if there is anything that has defined the politics of this day, it is the existence of super hypocrisy on a level that has not been known for, well, probably since the 1860s, I would say. I mean, you know, there were some pretty big hypocrites at the founding of the country for sure. But now this is a time where there's so little substance in politics that almost everything is straight symbolism.
Yeah.
And this is an inversion of that because it makes it obvious to you by showing you behind the scenes what is happening.
Right.
But I think you can infer a lot of the same moral ability between the villains of this show and the villains of our current moment without saying anything too direct and troublesome. I think that that's a big problem. Like I said, I was sort of underwhelmed by how like unctuous I felt that scene was. Those scenes are, right? Where the American flag is being, you know, prostituted as some sort of, you know, it's just a prop, right? It's a prop. It's a suit. It's not anything that stands for anything. It's himself.
Right.
So Homelander doesn't see the American flag as, he doesn't see himself as him wrapping himself in the American flag. He sees himself as wrapping himself around the American flag. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because it makes it more about him than the actual American flag itself. You know, and you know, when a person just makes it all about themselves and sees nothing around them as being anything, you know, it's being everything around them being below themselves. I mean, of course, you're going to have that type of, you know, mentality about that. And then noticing that you're going to use that symbol because how people grab onto symbols and really hold on to those symbols, you know, like they're actual limbs and everything, you know, to really take control of that is very brilliant of Homelander.
It really is. It really is. And, you know, the hypocrite as a person and as a character in, you know, not just in comic books, but as a character in literature goes back very, very deep. And it goes all the way to even like Falstaff in Shakespeare, where Falstaff says brave things, but is in fact, you know, very cowardly. It's the sort of thing that can be played for laughs, but usually it's not. Hypocrisy is usually one of those things. It's like hubris. It's the sort of thing you find in Greek mythology, right? It's the sort of thing that can really, you know, it's the sort of thing that can destroy anything. It's the one thing you can't have a defense about, you know?
Yeah.
I think that what makes Homelander so evil is his selfishness. If there is one feature to his soul that is
he cares about nothing but himself.
And he wants a son to glorify himself. Now, again, I'm not going to get too far into theology here, but there are some theologians who would tell you that the reason that we exist is because God needed to be praised, right? So he needed to create life so that could happen.
Right.
Well, why did Homelander need to have a son? Because he needed, it's almost like this idea where, like Alexander Hamilton would write to people and he would say things like I do not seek your approval because I've seen what you like, and I don't want to be compared to that because what you like is disgusting.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's there's almost a little bit of that to all of that. You know. I think that one thing about the end point of these 3 episodes in regards to Homelander, though, is that they have a character who is absolutely capable of anything that he wants to do. All he has to do is basically have the willpower to do it, the will to do it, and do it.
Right.
And, you know, it's obvious here that he is not at an advantageous position. He's behind the 8 ball with his boss. He's behind the 8 ball with his family.
Yeah.
He has some challenges that he has to navigate now.
Oh yeah, yeah. And,
politically, some ways, right?
And Stormfront just coming on the scene and just, you know, taking over his scene. You know,
Doing
notice she's doing his bit. Oh man,
you stole my bit
and everything. You know, she's out in front of the cameras, you know, talking all the crap and everything, you know, spewing all of her, you know, propaganda or what have you. And he's on the back end over there handing out the food and everything. I mean, it's like, come on now, for a person of hubris to get undercut by someone like that, much less a woman, you know, you know, in Homelander's eyes and everything, because I mean, he's probably putting people on these different scales, and to have himself, you know, undercut with that, she just brings so much energy to like the 7 that she's a shiny new, you know, toy that we were just talking about earlier with, you know, younger millennials and everything. She's a shiny new object that they're putting out there, who says what she means, who has that fire and has that fury that they could really just push Homelander, you know, to the side. Okay, we got this now. She has such great personality, you know.
So here's a question about, like, you know, Homelander was created by, you know, he was like done like his mother, right? Like when he was gestating, they started out with the Compound V. So are the supers getting stronger? Like, is Vought getting better at making Compound V? Are the millennials that come up, are they going to be more powerful? Not maybe than Homelander, because they're maybe getting started in a different way. But if they decided to go back to the drawing board and go back to the lab and create a Homelander now, and they had a difference of 40 years of technology, I mean, you would think they would be able to juice the Homelander up if they wanted to.
Okay, you actually bring up a really good point. So, just let me know if I missed something here. Compound V is a is it not a blanket like drug or, you know, thing that they put inside, like, you know, these babies and everything to make them supers? How does how do you define who gets what powers, or what powers do they get? You know, how does A-Train get to run quick? How does a Homelander get? So why can't they just create all Homelanders? You know, why who gets what, or what formula happens to where, you know, a super gets a specific power?
Well, it's probably just like anything else. I mean, if you and I get a pandemic disease, it may affect us in different ways, right? So if you and I were injected with, like, if you and I got poison ivy, one of us might get poison ivy worse than the other one. I think it's probably the same thing with Compound V, where it depends on how much you give them, and it like amplifies things. But, you know, it really seems like for the most part, people are getting the powers that sort of like match their personality, which is really weird, right?
That's weird, yeah.
That is a little weird, because the powers are developing around 9 or 10. The personality doesn't always develop that early. It's almost as if the powers develop first, and then the personality fills in all the gaps behind it. Which is a really weird way to think about superheroes. Like,
that's a really good way. I mean, if that's the direction they're going, that's a hell of a way to define, like, you know, powers based on personality. You know,
it would drive, like, if I could, let's say, throw a car, that would probably impact how people viewed me, right? Like, if I could pick up my mom's car and walk her to work like this, right? Like, people would probably be a lot nicer to me. Like, a little bit more. They would watch what they say around me.
Oh yeah. You could be defined as like a mad angry person.
Exactly, you know? Right? So look, like, I think that there's a little bit of chicken and egg sort of thinking there, right?
Okay.
That could be
It'd be interesting if they get into a little bit more of that
I hope they do, because they've released the information. The other big thing that happens in the third episode is how superheroes are created becomes public knowledge. Because Starlight drops the news on everybody out of nowhere. So now everybody knows that these people aren't like born. It's not the divine right of kings. It's science. So it's chosen, which means it's just people, which means that the Ubermensch theory is gone.
Right.
Is out the door. It's just people
Vaught
that can
is quick to even market that. Let's just flip it on his head and I mean, this is really all an entertainment commodity. And at the end of the day, they put on TV. They all these lies and these different things that they put out there as far as information to the public. This is just one other thing. It's kind of like how the public gets desensitized into so much stuff that's going on. This is just another layer that gets added to it. Oh well.
Yep. I do think that seeing Black Noir sobbing and sobbing and sobbing at the news, that he was like this happened to him because his parents did it to him. And we don't know anything about Black Noir, but he's so distraught by this news. And
that's funny.
Very funny. They really, that's a character that they do right. They do those sorts of like niche characters really well in this show. Man, the last thing I want to talk about, and I want to go back to Homelander and Ryan.
Okay.
And I want to say that Ryan,
we didn't really even talk about Billy, but he didn't really do a whole lot.
He's here now.
He's here now. I mean, he's Billy. Bam, and that's it.
He doesn't know where his wife is. All right, so So Ryan is being raised to love people. He's being raised to love his mother. He's being raised to have these good relationships with people that want to show him how to do things like play the piano and like teach him, and like it seems like he's getting a healthy home environment.
Right.
And I think that it's making me feel the tiniest little bit of pity toward Homelander, because that Homelander wasn't raised like that. That Homelander was raised like one of the Umbrella Academy kids, where he was treated like an experiment, a very dangerous experiment, which he was. And he was raised to hate those that did not have his powers, that wanted to control him, right? So if he would have been raised like normal,
or normal and everything, he'd be a whole different type person. And who wouldn't be envious of that based on their level of because you could tell that Homelander hates himself. He has this deep sense of insecurity about him, where he displays that in everybody, in his aggressions towards everyone else. So he sees his child as a way, okay, I don't know what to do with this toy. I don't know what to do with this, so I'm going to try to, he doesn't know how to be a father.
No.
So
he doesn't know how to be a person.
He doesn't know how to be a person. How can he raise one? Right.
He's like, to go back to Greek mythology, there were people whose dad was Zeus in Greek mythology, right? Where Zeus would come down and turn himself into like a goat and have a child, and it would be they call them demigods, and they would have some of the same powers.
Right.
But Zeus was known for being a real shitty dad. Like, he was terrible at being a dad. He would just abandon people and like turn them into trees and like, yeah, you're a rock now, fuck you. Like, that's kind of how Zeus. That's the whole Zeus's MO. And it seems to me like Homelander does not seem like he's going to be the type of father, that's gonna let you pick the sport you want to play. He seems like he's going to be like Marinovich's dad. You know what I mean? He's going to be, grinding him into dust and making him do the drills every day until 4 a.m. Like, if you let him have access to this child and let him raise this child, he will get the most out of this child.
But we see that Ryan has that spunk. He's not afraid of his dad.
No.
Ryan. Ryan's only going to be pushed only so much. To a point dealing with this guy, Homelander. So sure, he may be excited to maybe have him around, have someone to actually teach him, his powers, and
he doesn't want powers. Like, he's trying. It's interesting that like Homelander doesn't have a secret identity, right? Like, there's this bullshit identity they make up for him, where he's like at his dad's house or whatever, but he doesn't really have. Like, his name's John, but he doesn't really have a name.
He walks around in his Homelander suit all the time, because if come on, it's a Superman thing. If he dressed in like regular, like a suit and tie, he's still Homelander. It's not like you're going to put glasses on this guy and he's going to be a whole different person.
I was reading a thing. The actor did a it was on BuzzFeed, I think, or on Warming Glow or something like that, BuzzFeed TV. And he was doing this interview, and he said that until he like changes his hair, he gets recognized everywhere, and everyone is always looking at him like, because he looks like a psychopath because he's Homelander.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He can't not look like. He said he has to shave his head at the end of the season because otherwise he gets looks everywhere he goes.
Yeah. People, I don't know if you ever seen Banshee, but I mean, I know him from that show, and he was such a great character on that show. You know, such great action scenes. So to see him doing this thing, it's an extension of his personality of what he was doing in Banshee, because he was just such an anti-hero in that show. This here is just like, oh my God, it's just like that 10 times.
I wonder this. I was thinking about this in the shower earlier. I wonder how much Homelander's suit weighs. Like, if I were Homelander, I would have like 1 ton of stuff on me, right? Because what would the difference be? And like someone else tried to put on the Homelander suit and can't like pick it up. It'd be hilarious. That's a Dragon Ball Z thing. Don't worry about it. Goku wears weighted clothes, trains in them. Not a big deal. So we have one other thing we haven't really hit on, and that is Kimiko and her brother, Mouse.
Yeah.
So the telekinetic super terrorist, super villain is actually Kimiko's brother, and they have both been infected with this compound V, and whereas Kimiko got stronger and Lord knows what else, because it seems like she just is, well, what we've exhibited from Kimiko so far is the sort of the general imperviousness that all of the soups seem to have, right? Like you can kick Starlight through a wall, right? That's not related to the light powers. It's something different. So who knows what Kimiko's real actual ability is, and that's what I'm hoping that we find out eventually. But her brother is immensely powerful, an immensely powerful telepath to the point where you can't. He's a glass cannon, basically. You can't let him live because he can pull down buildings and helicopters.
Oh man,
So the 7 are coming on a whack mission, right? I mean, this is just a straight up hit. That's all it is. And you know, Stormfront murders Mouse in front of Kimiko. And that's gonna. So I think we all know what the ultimate comeuppance should be here, and I think we're all gonna look forward to it as season 2 rolls along. I was very impressed by the way they were able to create such a depth to Mouse in such a short amount of time. Already so invested in Kimiko that all of this backstory, like we're so thirsty for her backstory that it's like everything he said you were hanging on it or reading it since it was in Japanese.
Yeah. So that's the thing. And I watched this other show called Dark, and another foreign language shows, and I hardly ever watch foreign language shows from other countries and stuff. So maybe I should start watching more. But when you read subtitles, they pull you in more because you have to concentrate and not look at your phone or get distracted. So you have to be totally into it right then and there. So these words that are coming on the screen between the two, and this is the first time that we're really seeing Kimiko speak, with her brother, and it provides so much depth and insight into who she is and to what he is. And in that short amount of time, just have him get ripped from us and everything. That was, it's
no
great.
More information, no more help, no more silent, like nothing. And like there was this opportunity where we were going to be able to communicate with Kimiko, and that's been ripped away from everybody. So, she's obviously making progress, and that's good. I'm excited to see her get her revenge. I have this feeling, and this is just a feeling, that her power has something to do with her voice, and she's gonna have like a banshee scream sort of thing. Or if she talks, it just like
okay.
Because that's why she won't talk no more. Because maybe she did, and that's what killed her parents.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. That's all speculation. I don't know because I don't work for Amazon. And they wouldn't tell me stuff. They don't care. They don't give us early releases. We're not on their radar, thank God.
Not yet. Great first 3 episodes. Though.
Yeah.
Great way to jumpstart the season. Get everybody into it instead of just dropping 1 and then waiting the other weeks. 3 episode knockout, and then we got the next 5 episodes to finish off the season for these next 5 weeks. So I'm looking forward to talking more about the boys.
Hey, we're gonna be back next week. Once these episodes drop, we have a chance to really sort of think about them. Watch them and think about it. We need a day or so, and we'll be back talking about the boys. The nerds to talk about the boys here. One thing that I hope you all do is I hope you all subscribe to this channel on YouTube. And the reason's very simple. We put out our shows on one feed on YouTube. So if you're listening to us on a podcast, if you like the boys, if you like what you're hearing, check out our YouTube feed because that's the unified feed for all the new stuff. So it'll be on there. Also check our podcast. Also check our website, nerdcyclopedia.com. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm on Twitch as SC Hitch. I play, get this, Mega Man.
All right.
Yeah, I'm pretty terrible at it in comparison to the good people, but I'm better than you. So come check it out. I don't know who you are, but I probably am better than you.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. I'm in the top 100.
I'm sure we'll get the hashtags hate Scott.
Everybody likes the hashtag hate Scott. All right, Sam, you got anything else to say here?
Hey, DP's in the house and Hitch is in the house, and we're just going to come at you for these next 5 weeks.
Yep.
It's going to be some really good stuff and really some deep stuff to unpack with the boys this season.
All right, guys. So check us out, and we'll see you next week. And that's his Nerds Talk About the Boys.
I'm DP.
He's DP, and I'm Hitch, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Who's that?
Yeah, so I just think that these episodes are really good, really deep.
That's funny.
Cool, excellent.
Yeah.